Have you ever pondered on the roots of the long-standing Israel-Palestine conflict? To trace these roots, we must journey back to the ancient civilizations that first graced the land. This region, known as Canaan in ancient times, was home to an intriguing mix of cultures, languages, and peoples. Among them were the early Jewish and Arab populations, both carving out their own distinctive histories in this land of milk and honey. The Jewish narrative begins with the biblical story of Abraham, who is said to have migrated to Canaan from Mesopotamia. His descendants, the Israelites, are believed to have established the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, entities that were later conquered by foreign empires. Despite this, the Jewish connection to the land remained unbroken, their longing for a return to Zion a constant echo throughout their diaspora. Parallel to this, the Arab narrative is tied to the Islamic belief that Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven from Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, a city they conquered in the 7th century. This event marked the beginning of Islamic rule in the region, a reign that lasted over 1,000 years, fostering a deep-rooted Arab and Islamic identity in the land. These narratives, centuries apart, have one common thread: a profound spiritual and historical connection to the land. But they also lay the groundwork for a contentious claim over the area. For many Jews, the land is their ancestral home, promised to them by God. For Arabs, it is an integral part of their Islamic heritage and identity. In the midst of these two powerful narratives, a third emerged, that of the Christian Crusaders, who, driven by religious fervor, sought to reclaim the Holy Land from its Islamic rulers. This added yet another layer to the complex tapestry of the region's history. With every passing century, these narratives have intertwined and clashed, shaping the region's identity and sowing the seeds of conflict. These threads of history, religion, and identity are inextricably woven into the fabric of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Now, with the seeds of conflict sown in ancient times, let's see how the modern conflict took shape. As we step into the late 19th and early 20th century, two significant movements emerged: Zionism and Arab nationalism. Zionism sprouted from the Jewish communities of Europe, with Theodor Herzl, an Austro-Hungarian journalist, leading the charge. The goal: to establish a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine, their ancestral land. Fueled by centuries of persecution and the dream of a safe haven, Zionism gained traction. Jews started migrating to Palestine, buying lands and creating settlements. Simultaneously, another movement was blossoming in the Arab world: Arab nationalism. Inspired by the winds of change in Europe, Arab intellectuals and leaders yearned for their own nation-states, free from Ottoman rule. They envisioned a united Arab world, sharing a common language, culture, and history. These two movements were on a collision course. The Jews, backed by Zionist ideology, saw Palestine as their promised land. On the other hand, the Arabs, ignited by their nationalist spirit, saw Palestine as an integral part of the Arab world. This tension found its expression in the Balfour Declaration of 1917. Arthur Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary, issued a declaration expressing Britain's support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This statement, however, came with a caveat: the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine were not to be prejudiced. The Balfour Declaration was a double-edged sword. While it gave the Zionist movement a significant boost, it also sowed the seeds of discontent among the Arab population. The British, who were governing Palestine under a League of Nations mandate, were now caught in a crossfire of nationalist aspirations. Indeed, the stage was set. Palestine had become a crucible of competing nationalisms, with both parties unwilling to compromise their dreams, and as history would have it, the tensions between the Zionists and Arab nationalists were about to escalate. With the stage set for conflict, World War II becomes a catalyst for what's to come. World War II's end did not mean peace for all. For the land of Israel and Palestine, it marked the beginning of a new phase of strife. The horrors of the Holocaust had a profound impact on global sentiment towards the Jewish people, leading to a surge in Jewish immigration to Palestine. This mass migration, however, was not welcomed by the Arab inhabitants, leading to escalating tensions and frequent clashes between the two communities. As the situation deteriorated, Britain, which held the mandate for Palestine since the end of World War I, decided to wash its hands of the troublesome region. In 1947, unable to reconcile the conflicting demands of the Jews and Arabs, Britain announced its intention to terminate the mandate and passed the problem to the United Nations. The United Nations, in an attempt to find a peaceful resolution, proposed a partition plan. The plan sought to divide Palestine into two separate states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem under international administration due to its religious significance. This plan was accepted by the Jewish Agency for Palestine, but vehemently rejected by the Arab League and the Palestinian Arab leadership. Despite the rejection, on the 14th of May 1948, the day the British mandate officially ended, David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish Agency, declared the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Israel to be known as the State of Israel. This declaration was met with jubilation by Jews around the world. For the Arabs, however, it was seen as a blatant act of aggression, a usurpation of what they believed to be their lands. The very next day, armies from Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq and Lebanon invaded the newly declared state, sparking the first of many Arab-Israeli wars. The declaration of Israel's statehood was a joyous moment for some, a moment of dread for others, marking the start of a series of wars. The birth of Israel ignited a series of wars and uprisings. Like the spark that lights the fuse of a firework, the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 set off a chain reaction of conflicts that would shape the region for decades to come. Let's start with the Six-Day War. In June of 1967, the tension between Israel and its neighbors reached a boiling point. The war was swift, but its impact was profound. In just 6 days, Israel managed to capture the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. This territorial expansion not only changed the map of the Middle East, but it also escalated the conflict, planting the seeds for future wars. Fast forward to October 1973, the Yom Kippur War, named so because it began on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, came as a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria. Israel, caught off guard, struggled initially, but eventually managed to push back the invaders. The war ended with a ceasefire, but not before it had left deep wounds on both sides. Now, let's talk about the Intifadas. These Palestinian uprisings against Israeli occupation have marked two significant periods in the history of this conflict. The first Intifada, sparked in 1987, was characterized by civil disobedience and protests. Its successor, the Second Intifada, erupted in the year 2000, marked by an escalation into armed conflict, with suicide bombings and military operations becoming tragically common. These wars and uprisings, each with their unique consequences, have shaped the borders of Israel and the status of Jerusalem. They have influenced policies, fueled animosities, and left a legacy of mistrust and resentment. In the grand scheme of things, these events are like chapters in a book, each one building on the last, adding complexity to the narrative, making the path to resolution even more challenging. These wars solidified the divide, leaving scars that are yet to heal. The story of Israel and Palestine is one of a struggle for identity, self-determination and survival, a tale that is still being written today. Fast forward to the present day, the conflict persists, with peace seeming elusive. The echoes of history reverberate in the current landscape of the Israel-Palestine conflict. The strife continues to be fueled by a myriad of complex and intertwined issues, with the question of settlements being one of the most contentious. Israeli settlements, communities established by Israel in territories it occupied following the Six-Day War of 1967, are a focal point of tension. They are seen by Palestinians as an encroachment on their land and a significant obstacle to peace. The international community views these settlements as illegal under international law, a stance that Israel disputes. The status of Jerusalem is another point of contention. Revered by Jews, Muslims and Christians alike, this city is a symbol of historical, religious and cultural significance. Israel claims the entire city as its capital, a move not recognized by many in the international community. Palestinians, on the other hand, envision East Jerusalem, which was occupied by Israel during the 1967 war, as the capital of their future state. The impact of the conflict on daily life in Israel and Palestine is profound. Security measures, restrictions on movement and recurring bouts of violence have become a part of the quotidian reality for people living in the region. The conflict has taken a heavy toll on the economy and infrastructure, exacerbating poverty and unemployment. While numerous peace initiatives have been launched over the years, None have managed to resolve the deep-seated issues at the heart of the conflict. The path to peace is fraught with obstacles, but hope persists. Many believe that a two-state solution with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace is the most viable option. The Israel-Palestine conflict, rooted in history and sustained by a complex web of issues, remains one of the world's most enduring disputes. Yet the quest for peace continues, underpinned by the belief that dialogue and negotiation can pave the way to a more harmonious future.